So hello everybody. An incredibly warm welcome to everybody in the room here with us at IDS and to our online audience, wherever you may be, to this year's IDS Annual Lecture. This is an incredibly important and special event in the IDS calendar, which I always look forward to tremendously. It's our opportunity to invite a speaker who pushes all of us a little bit outside of the box of our normal thinking and practice in development studies. And this year, I really think we've done that in spades. I'm incredibly privileged to welcome to IDS Yasmeen Lari to give this year's lecture. Yasmeen is Pakistan's first female architect. She's a co-founder of the Heritage Foundation in Pakistan and a winner of the highly prestigious Jane Drew Prize in Architecture in 2020. She is also founder of the Barefoot Architecture Initiative, which is a really innovative initiative to link architecture with development in some incredibly important ways, aiming to tackle and to lead to zero poverty through working with people in their villages in ways that both empower and enable self-build and architecture, which really contributes to some of the things we care about really deeply at IDS: social justice, sustainability, and ways to tackle crisis. Yasmeen today is going to be delivering a lecture on the Pakistan floods and how rebuilding can also assist women's empowerment and take place through sustainable design. When we first invited her to do this lecture, the Pakistan floods had not happened. But now that they have, devastating as they are, I think the relevance of today's lecture to some of the things we're working on at IDS is more important than ever, in three particular ways. Firstly, that we're all thinking about responding to the crises of our era, those multiple intersecting crises, which bring together problems of climate change, of poverty, of inequality, and of the economic and political crises that flow from those things. So a way forward that gives us a politics of hope through innovative approaches is more important than ever. Secondly, we're really interested in IDS at the moment in how development studies and the social sciences and the natural sciences can link across with practical disciplines, with the humanities, with design, and indeed with architecture. And that's, I think, what we're going to hear about today. And then thirdly, we recently founded in IDS a Pakistan hub to bring together and move forward with some of our long-standing strategic partnerships with colleagues in Pakistan. And I think Yasmeen will offer us a way to take those partnerships to new levels and in new directions. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Yasmeen to give her lecture. After that, we'll have the opportunity for Q&A with an online audience. I'd ask you to put your questions in the Q&A function on Zoom, and also with our online audience. And we'll have a chance to open up a conversation about the ways in which architecture can help respond to the development challenges of our era. So, Yasmeen, a very warm welcome to you.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you. Hello, everybody. Well, I bring you greetings from Pakistan, and I have to thank very much Professor Melissa for inviting me, and a very warm welcome I received here. So that's been wonderful. And of course, to Sophie, who's not here, unfortunately, today, she's got COVID, I believe. So, you know, who's been really instrumental in such a lot of hard work in putting together this event, but also Steve and Gary, who've been helping with the technology. So I hope it goes without a hitch, but I never can tell. So, but it's such a privilege for me to be in this, you know, among eminent experts of the IDS to discuss issues of sustainability, climate resilience, and exploring pathways to work with marginalized sections, particularly women. And it's been such a rewarding session this morning when we were together with so many of the experts here who brought in so much of experience and knowledge that they shared. And I think it's such a good opportunity with climate change for all of us to pool together our own kind of thoughts and processes to see what we can do, because climate change is something that is impacting all of us all around the world. So if today it's Pakistan, it could be any other country tomorrow. So it's nice to see so many young people here and such a diverse group of students that you have here who come from different countries, different backgrounds. And so I hope that, you know, there was something that I can show you which might be a little bit different that you might have been thinking about earlier. So today, may I just start the whole thing, please? So you can see it's all about the floods and rebuilding through women's empowerment and sustainable design. This is, as you can see, I'll be talking more about the floods, but I'll be talking about also a little bit more about my background and how I've got there, because there may be some young people who might be wishing to know how you can get into this kind of a field. I don't know whether it'll help, but I would like to just share with you where I'm coming from. So, just to see, I think it's going to be in 4 parts, introduction and basically my journey, then Pakistan's strengths and also challenges that we face, and then my Barefoot Social Architecture, BASA, that I've devised really to work with the poor and the ones who are marginalized. And the last one will be community-driven, women-led response to Pakistan deluge of 2022. So this is about the work that we are currently undertaking in Pakistan. So while working with climate migrants and post-disaster communities, my attempt is to promote sustainable, low-impact, low-tech building techniques, which would help in improving the quality of life for the disadvantaged, and above all, to bring about empowerment and dignity for women through a process of co-building and co-creation. I do believe that being a woman has been actually an advantage for me. A lot of times it's thought that being a woman will hamper things, but it's been quite different for me. And whenever I've been working, especially with the disaster-affected communities, it has allowed me access into areas where in constrictive and, you know, really male-dominated societies such as Pakistan, you know, men would not be allowed to enter. So they could not go in, but I could go. And so I was able to go into women's quarters and I could discuss with them and to see what is it that, you know, one needed to do for them. So ever since I began work in disaster areas, since 2005 earthquake, it has become clear to me that women need to be in the forefront of development. They're normally not. Because whenever it is a question of shelter or sanitation or water or cooking, it is women who are affected the most. In most of my work, I have attempted to use architectural innovations to transform lives of those living at the bottom of the pyramid. These have been, said, impossible only because women in these communities spearheaded these efforts. They were there in the forefront. So now, as I've said in my manifesto published last year in London's Design magazine, today we live in an era that is beset with fragmentation and disruptions. It is a world ravaged by rising poverty levels and increasing disparities, depletion of the Earth's resources and climate change impact, along with COVID-19 imperatives, all requiring innovative design solutions. Under such challenging circumstances, when many countries in the world will be unable to meet UN's Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs, it is the power of design that needs to serve the other 99%. We know that all designers are there to serve the 1%, but I think we need them on the other side as well. Especially today, when after the deluge in Pakistan, more than 50% of the population is living below the poverty line in my country. As we know, the vast majority remains unserved or underserved all around the world, actually, waiting for designers to provide rights-based solutions for fulfilling primary and unmet needs of marginalized sections. Somehow we never get to that. So women in any case have double jeopardy, as we know, maybe triple jeopardy, I don't know. When poverty levels rise, and particularly when displacement occurs, they are the worst sufferers and they are the most neglected. Nobody bothers to take care of them. We're all aware of the damage caused to the Earth's ecosystem due to wasteful and highly consumptive ways of living and building around the world. We need to work together to find ways to deal with social injustices in the global South. Especially, we have to combat what I call ecological injustices and eco-bigotry that is prevalent in the global North. In view of occurrences of worldwide natural disasters due to climate, the fault lines are now really evident in the wasteful and highly energy consumptive high-tech urban design and architectural solutions adopted by industrialized societies and followed blindly by the LDCs also. So we see it everywhere. So let's see, how can I go forward? Yeah, oops. Right. So it is, the natural disasters such as Pakistan earthquake 2005 that provided me the opportunity to begin working on earth buildings using lime instead of cement and incorporating recycled materials retrieved from the debris of collapsed houses. But at that time, buildings such as these were considered non-architecture. And my work was largely looked upon with disdain by my peers. They saw my alternative participatory ways of building to empower communities with much condescension. They didn't think I was in the right direction. The general impression among the elitist world was that in my old age, I was suffering from a touch of insanity and was no longer able to see the dazzling potential of the 21st century, which was, of course, there. So, and of course, I had been one of them at one time, when in 1964, as the first female architect of Pakistan, having graduated from Oxford Brookes, I began my architectural practice in a conservative male-dominated Muslim country. And in the 1980s, as a star architect, I had the opportunity to design some of the largest iconic structures. I myself indulged in an extravagant, egotistic journey, which focusing on serving the elite of my country, using some of the most expensive materials, carrying the most carbon footprint, and now I had turned renegade, devoting my time to working for the poor. Also, the influential elite felt that, our resource-deficient country should nevertheless, be branded or be shown its symbols of progress to be considered par with industrialized nations. So our gaze firmly set towards the glittering New York high-rise towers and the make-believe world urban centers of Middle Eastern kingdoms, well known for indulgence in high-carbon megastructures emitting greenhouse gases over the entire life cycle of their iconic buildings. So this is where we were in the early part of this century. So now I come to the second part of my presentation, is to do with Pakistan and strengths and challenges. I thought a lot of people don't know much about Pakistan. I thought it might be a good opportunity to, tell you or explain to you or share with you what is happening in my country. So this is, just to give you a glimpse of my country and the reason why my work needed to be somehow grounded, and it had to be around the nexus of tradition and innovation, humanism and community involvement. So now if you see the heritage that we possess, I thought I wanted to show the diversity in the heritage that we do have. So as you might know, Pakistan is, is custodian of some of the most ancient heritage, such as the Bronze Age Mohenjo-daro and Mehergarh, and so many diverse kind of kingdoms that were there and rulers that were there, that we really have a diversity that is not seen in many other countries. And then, of course, as you will see, there's also the intangible heritage, which is to do with Sufi traditions and spiritualism, folklore and folk traditions, oral history and diverse crafts. But then also there's the vernacular heritage that's mostly overlooked and forgotten, and which I think is very important for us today when we talk of sustainability and when we're talking of, things that we need to do. So, so there we are, and I thought it's good to see, where I'm coming from and why am I trying to do the things that I am now doing. So then I also very quickly wanted to share with you some of the, this kind of methodologies in sort of in various historic towns of Pakistan. So this is on the left is the wind catcher, which is absolutely, as you know, it's a zero energy cooling device in the historic town of Thatta in the south, close to actually Karachi, with these wind scoops. And then again on the right, you see a selection of kind of diagrams and picture of the city house in Peshawar, which is to do all with mass massing of walls and collecting cool air in the introverted space of the courtyard. So there are many lessons there. I will not bore you with all of them, but I think there are directions or there are pointers as to what we can learn from the past. And I'm sure it's everywhere in the world. It's not only in Pakistan, where what people have done before, had value, which we have largely forgotten today. So then, of course, in Pakistan, we have the social justice issues, and I've enumerated them. There are lots of things that are not quite okay. And we need to be working towards these, and unless we are able to do something about it, I don't know how we can progress. And then also climate change is a big issue for us, because if you will see from 2005, I've listed almost every year we've had a disaster, either floods or earthquakes. So, and of course, the latest one is the worst possible one, because it's really so much of the country along it. So this is what's happening. We are the 7th topmost vulnerable country in the world today in terms of climate change. And so this is something that we need to be preparing for all the time, and we are never really prepared, unfortunately. So then also, I thought I'd share with you what I call the international colonial charity model, which I feel has been detrimental to building up capacities of our own people. So 2005, highly destructive 7.6 Richter scale earthquake that claimed over 70,000 lives and displaced 400,000 families. And through many other successive disasters, Pakistan has been subjected to the colonial charity humanitarianism. It has robbed people of self-respect and self-esteem and rendered them dependent on others. So this is the model that was promoted for us. And so you can see I've listed down what I think has been not quite okay with this kind of a model. Charity, I don't believe in. I think it's the worst thing that can be done to people. Alien imagery is certainly not the one that we need in our countries. It's been culturally and environmentally damaging. And sometimes we don't put enough emphasis on cultural aspects, but I think they are very important in people's lives. So I think we have to be very careful. And somehow whatever was given, we just didn't have enough knowledge and tools so that, you could provide the assistance that was needed at that time and even afterwards. And women were always left behind. As I said, nobody could enter, nobody knew, nobody bothered about them, because there were very few women in the aid agencies who came to help. And so I think we need more women out there, and I think that will change the world. Actually, we need to be there. And then, of course, there's always the very high cost of disbursement of all these international agencies. So the handouts converted perfectly able people into supplicants who no longer believed in their own capacity for productive work. This was the time that UN cluster or silo system became strengthened, and international and national NGOs flourished as agents or intermediaries for implementation of this highly acclaimed colonial humanitarianism, which created, really treated affected households as victims rather than partners in development. And I think that's where the key is. And that's what I'm trying now to not to do. I mean, I don't, in my work, I don't treat them as victims. So then we also saw the kind of building that came up. At the time, it was the same mindset that popularized high carbon reinforced steel and concrete structures as dream houses to the displaced populations. This attitude led to denigration of traditional vernacular construction. We all thought that was no good, no use, should be just given away, even though it was zero or low carbon and more suited to the living conditions of the mountainous environment. This nobody bothered to think about. The emphasis on state, or very few, let's say, the emphasis on state-of-the-art high carbon buildings coupled with lack of accountability left a large population with unfulfilled expectations. So many things were not done. And here it is, I think, a moot point, whether Pakistan's 2010 devastating countrywide floods and many later ones were not a result of the high carbon route adopted for post-2005 development, which is in all probability resulted in the melting of the glaciers in my country's northern mountains. I mean, nobody's done the study. Would be good to do that to see what really happened at the time. By popularizing colonial humanitarianism, Pakistan lost the opportunity to further a culture of self-reliance and sustainable development that could have led to regeneration of local economy and reduction in poverty levels. It did not happen. So let's look at the impact. As we know, some of you, especially who are architects here, they would know, or maybe they probably should study this, that 40% of world energy is really being emitted by buildings that we build today. And so we are really responsible, all urban environment professionals, whether they are architects or urban planners or others, this is what we're doing. And you can see the energy requirement of steel and Portland cement and ceramic brick even. And we have to be mindful when we build as to how we build today, because it is having a great impact on climate change. So now I also wanted to show you that this is an international model on the left with burnt brick, and there was a very fine advisor to defeat called Magnus Bush-Murray, who calculated that if 100,000 one-room shelters were built after 2010 floods, then something like 50,000 acres would have been deforested, and maybe they were deforested, I don't know for sure, but this is the quantum of damage that can be done if you build unthinkingly, and particularly in post-disaster situations. And so all of us really carry a huge responsibility as to what we really do. So it was really because donor fatigue had set in, and some targets had to be met. That at least one international agency, IOM, decided to use the local sustainable model of earth, lime, and bamboo, which cost 1/5 of the cost of international engineered models. So that is the reason why it was done. And so no carbon emissions, no trees were felled, 1,750 villages were covered, 300,000 people were housed, and with all locally sourced clay, low energy lime, and renewable bamboo. So then I thought I'd better share with you the colonial legacy that we have had after 150 years of colonial rule, and it's in our independence in 1947. Pakistan has been largely dominated by generations of overlords who had acted as loyal agents to the imperial power to govern the vast territories. And today, too, they wield excessive power, resulting in poor governance with little oversight over international and aid and whatever has been received. Each successive government high on Transparency International's Corruption Perception Index. And this is something that is of course great concern to many of us, because we know that the money that should be going to the poor is not really reaching them because of this reason. And so let's move on to the next part, which is Barefoot Social Architecture. So during all these years, it was the interaction with poverty-stricken, vulnerable populations that forced me to dispense with my hugely inflated ego that it was, obligating me to swallow the bitter pill of humility, which you have to do if you work with the poor, by sitting at the threshold of the poor, exploring their age-old practices. So that's where you learn. You learn from them rather than trying to impose your ideas on them. Learning from Pakistan's pre-industrial vernacular heritage, I understood that design is not a standalone activity. It must be underpinned by considerations of social impact and ecological sustainability. This has to be all built into it. You cannot do it as a separate, separate project. As I moved forward on a divergent path from the one which I had been trained for, the question uppermost in my mind is, how can architects play a role in mending the imbalances by stitching this highly damaged earth tapestry? And that's what we must do if we want our next generation to survive. And above all, how can architectural design transform women's lives? Give them agency, pride, and identity. It is possible to do that, through co-creation of elements designed to fulfill the unmet needs of those at the bottom of the pyramid. And at the same time, design climate smart, sustainable structures that resonate with their own cultural norms and their traditions. So there's Barefoot and Muckley, because of widespread deficits and deprivations, particularly among women. For me, the pursuit for justice has been paramount. I feel compelled to find architectural solutions that provide both social and ecological justice. I do not believe we have to sacrifice the search for justice of one kind on the cost of the other. We have to be doing both of them. And the reason for designing a stratagem called Barefoot Social Architecture, or BASA, for the disadvantaged was because I felt empathy with those who walked barefoot and had become my fellow travelers. So that's how it all started off. So what is BASA? Firstly, BASA is akin to social engineering for bringing about social change. Secondly, it incorporates environmental, cultural, and technical dimensions in its approaches. Thirdly, it helps to transformation of mindset from a cycle of dependency to a culture of pride and self-reliance. This is so important, and it's an intangible quality, but it must be there if we want to move forward. And fourthly, it seeks to democratize architecture that provides people with well-being and self-esteem. And I think all of us have become very aware after COVID-19, all of us need that actually, everywhere in the world. So, and fourthly, and rather fifthly, it unashamedly promotes zero carbon footprint structures, non-engineered, doesn't have to be engineered, with its motto of 4 zeros: zero carbon, zero waste, zero cost to donor, leading to zero poverty. Because I do believe if we can spread this whole thing, I think we will get there. So just wanted to show you very quickly the impact of BASA and some of the work that we have done. You can see the benefits that were accrued through that application of those principles. We were able to provide assistance to 0.84 million people in something like, 5 years, or over 100,000 persons per year. And all through, zero carbon, rights-based development, it aims to achieve 12 out of 17 SDGs. So although Pakistan is nowhere near getting there, but, we have to find ways by which we could at least aim for that. So this approach has allowed me to adopt a bottoms-up approach, encouraging efficient use of funds and resources, rights-based development, knowledge sharing through training and guidance, for cost-effective output. So it's always very economical the way that I build. This in turn has stimulated the barefoot ecosystem in order to foster a life of reasonable fulfillment. That's all we can hope for, through an enabling process of serving and sharing with the other disadvantaged populace. So what they do or what they make or they produce is not for the rich or the elite or for urban markets, it's for the other people who are right there along with them. And there's a huge market. More than 50% are below the poverty line. So this is how we can maximize the poverty levels. So in order to create zero carbon humanistic architecture, I really follow 2 gurus, and I have to share them with you. So one is, of course, Hassan Fateh. There is, the Earth Guru, author of Architecture for the Poor, who taught me the value of engaging them to unleash their creativity, because they have a creativity of, amazing kind of, kind of skills and the way that they do design things themselves. And then there's also Marcus Vitruvius that you all must know or must have heard of at least, of course, the 1st century BC architect. And the one that's, is from him, I learned the use of lime as well as the importance of air, water, earth, and fire. 4 elements, the alchemy of which leads us to democratic norms and behavior. So it is very important to understand how those things worked. And then my palette only consists of 3 materials. So these are the ones that I use in my humanitarian architecture to achieve carbon neutral structures. This is all that I do, or use whatever stone or thatch or bushes or whatever is available that you can use within those structures. But basically, it's really these 3 that form most of the work that I do, which is earth and lime and bamboo. And I don't know, I don't know, you must know something about it, but do please read up on all this, because they're amazing materials and they are easily available in many parts of the world. Bamboo is not available in UK so much, but I think we should somehow, change that. I think it should be grown here as well. So let's see if that can happen, and that would be really good. So coincidentally, the use of such materials is the very route that needs to be taken if the depletion of the planet's resources are to be forestalled, and if global warming is to be minimized, the route to zero or low ecological footprint. This has to be done everywhere in one degree or the other. And why not hybrid architecture here in the West, in the global North, where it could be a combination of high carbon and low carbon materials. So I think we have to think about what could be the possible ways to do this. And now I come to the last one. Am I doing all right for time? And yeah, it's okay. All right, good, okay, thank you. So I'm sorry, but I messed up my title here. It's really to do with community-driven, women-led response to the 2022. That's what I'll be talking about now. So I got the wrong title there. So in the third week of August this year, a rare occurrence of record monsoon rains combined with melting glaciers in our northern mountains have caused a deluge, resulting in the displacement of 33 million people. Can you imagine? Rendering them bereft of homes and belongings. That has also wiped out thousands of acres of standing crops. So basically everything was wiped out in wherever you see, and you can see how much the red shows what kind of a deluge was it, and never been seen before. And on the right, of course, you see my province, Sindh, where we've taken up our work. We're working in other areas also with other partners, but I'm concentrating more on Sindh. So we know that this major calamity is the result of global warming, aggravated by the global north's unregulated consumption, as well as unfettered greenhouse gas emissions by countries all around the world. Everybody's indulging into it. I mean, coal-fired, I don't know, energy and all kinds of things. So they're really the kind of attention that should be paid to, what can happen is, I believe, not quite there. And I don't know what happened in COP27, we know whatever happened in COP26, and before that, somehow we're not reaching the targets that have been, so what we do, I don't know, we have to think about that. So with the state being largely absent from the scene in my country, we have been able to achieve empowerment and sustainable capacity for local development, and communities, particularly women, are engaged in local planning and decision-making for service deliveries by vendors for lighting and water supply, for instance. So gradually, their own capacity to really control what's going on there is becoming evident. They have begun to participate in regeneration of local economy by fabricating barefoot products, which are designed to fulfill the unmet needs of marginalized and displaced families around them in that vicinity, utilizing their own skills and training. They are teaching and learning from each other to improve their own quality of life. Now, this becomes very important when you work with communities. How do you, when you build up their capacity, how can you help each other? And the whole, you see, whole cooperative kind of arrangement going on among themselves. And this is very heartening because you cannot have so many people to go train, but if they themselves begin training, then your work is, of course, minimized. So basically, I did this slide because I want to say no to handouts, yes to self-reliance. A lot of times we still hanker for fundraising and money coming in from somewhere. And for me, it always goes into a bottomless pit where nobody knows who it's gone to. So I want to change that somehow. And this is what I'm discussing all the time as to what should we do that it's not anonymous. Whatever is given is not anonymous. Whatever is given, you should have a relationship with the people that you want to help. And then how do you do it? And is it possible with today's world where technology is there and communication is so much easier? There can be direct connections. So why do we need intermediaries to give funds to for them to do? Why can't it be done otherwise? I think that'll be far more cost effective. The money will go to the people that deserve it. And hopefully that will mean easier way to a path to recovery. So anyway, so self-reliance instead of dependence, partners instead of victims, rise above adversity through skill training and capacity building. This is what I want, and this is what I'm trying to do. So I thought I'll show you now how I'm going about it. These are some of the buildings that I built earlier, and I've designed several of them, for different places. I mean, mostly these are for flood areas, but I've done some for earthquakes as well, which have withstood pretty well on shaking table test and so on. So there are so many structures which are a combination of earth and lime and earth and bamboo structures. But because the first need for every family today is shelter. And over the years, I have designed several alternatives for both flood and earthquake disasters, as I said. And I'm not presenting all of them to you, but I thought the one that I'm now popularizing, which has actually become a very favorite of a lot of people, is this one, which is called the log or Lari Octogreen. It is made out of prefabricated panels. Oh, thank you so much. So basically, I'll just show you the beginning of it, which is that you make these prefab bamboo panels. which can be done under factory conditions or somewhere where you can control the quality and so on, and then you can put it together, and the finishing can be done with any kind of material that is there, because the panels themselves are structural, so they are very strong themselves. And you put them onto foundations, and they work well. They've withstood both seismic jolts and flood onslaughts, and they can be just built very quickly. But they also, so they are modular, so you can have many different shapes. So if you want to put a schoolroom, then you can do a slightly larger one, or you want to do a community center, then you can have a larger span, and you can even do domes and so on. So there's plenty that is possible with a very simple structure such as this one. So since, sorry, may I go forward? Yeah, so this is, again, could you please, Gary, if you will. So this is really, this shows how. Put up an emergency shelter, so this is bamboo, and everything will be tied with ropes. Even the work of the fabrication and bamboo it's all rooted and everything done by hand.
Lower the sound.
Mark the circle, you are then putting the different parts, the various panels are then put up, and the panels themselves are tied together with rope, and then I will put a bamboo post in the middle of 12 to 6 centimeters of height, and that means that you can put your. But the post is removed afterwards, okay? So like an umbrella, which is tied on the post, and then you just cover everything with this matting on the side and the roof. And this is something that needs to be very easy afterwards. The use is available, so how you can use the common shelter. Even for this, you provide a link or a video so that people who want to do it will know how to do it. Okay, now we can stop. So yeah, now we can stop. Yeah. So this one is really it's being used because everybody was displaced at the time. So it was good for that we could just quickly send them off. So there was something like 2,000 that was done, and they were immediately sent off. And but now that the water is heated, the same ones can be taken with them wherever they want to set up, and they only have to put up their foundations, and this will be as strong as anything else. So it is a technique to somehow not to waste any material, that whatever is there can be reused and can be made very strong and climate resistant. So, and they cost only 25,000 rupees, this particular one, and they can be just. I think it takes only 2 hours to put it all, put it all together in the sense of re-erection, and maybe another, again, 2 hours to produce it. And this is all being done in my zero carbon center, which is close to this World Heritage Site called Makli. So that's where we train all the people who come in and so on. But now I'm training also in the villages. So now the thing is that we have to make sure that whatever we do for emergency, it's not wasted, that it can be reused and so on. Because I think waste would be terrible, because we just need all the funds and resources that are available rather than trying to do more and more. So I will just got this now on a Google map, trying to put in all our what we call the zero carbon villages, and they're all the ones where work on these zero carbon shelters or other procedures is going on. There's something like 60 villages that have been taken up, where different partners and different people from southern Punjab down to Sindh are actually working, and I think some work is starting also in Balochistan. So this whole concept is spreading. It is being taken up by people, but it's not fast enough. So we have to see how we scale up more quickly. So then I wanted to show you my particular one, the cluster of Pono village. And this is the state of water. This was right in August and September. The one on the left is a September picture, and the one on the right was in August. The water is receding, but there's still a lot of water in some of the places. So now there's something like 13 villages here that we've taken up, and this is the way I'm trying to cluster villages. So the center is the Pono Markaz or Pono Center, and then there are another 12 villages all around it. So the Pono Center is the one that provides training to various artisans and to other villages in zero carbon construction techniques. And so basically, other villages, there are 12 of them, and even Pono, specialize in a certain kind of barefoot enterprise. The barefoot enterprise, of course, is something that's very low cost and products that can be used by people all around them. So I'll tell you more about it a little bit. So I just wanted to show you how the training is going on. So there's just glimpses to show you what kind of people there are, what they are, how they're working, and so on. So you can see bamboo being learned by this woman here on the right, and people coming together to try to understand how to take up various things. I've just got a few images to show you, an idea of what is going on. So, for instance, there are platforms, earth platforms being built, and with the earth bricks. Some pottery going on the right. There's also, work on earth bricks being fabricated, and also something to do with lime on the left bottom. And then you can see how women are decorating their houses, the same one that you saw being now covered with plaster, and so they make them habitable. On the right is a Pakistan chula or the stove being built, and then more discussions in a community center, and also how women are learning from each other in decoration and making them beautiful. And you can see how the structure is put up, and women are, really the ones who are responsible for pushing everything forward here. So that's what's amazing also, because mostly we think that women will not be able to handle all this, but they are done very well indeed. So these are all the log ones. I just want to show you very quickly again, is the same one that you saw earlier. And then you see how it starts in a village, and then you put the matting on, and on the right, you see how they finish it off. And then it becomes certainly very, very much more habitable, and it is all their own work. So really their contribution is also almost more in many ways than any of us could have done. And but the problem with me was that to me, it's a very high cost. It's 100 pounds per each one of them. And the issue is that as I said, there's something like 5 million people or families needing some sort of shelter. So I designed a little bit, even a cheaper one with only, I think it's only 10 pounds. And I'll show you what it is. It's a basic bamboo structure, which of course is not as strong as the other one, but it will provide you enough protection unless the massive floods come in, and you can use it always later on as well, as long as we fix it properly, into the ground. So again, the system is there where the matting is made by the families themselves, and then they again start finishing them off. And sometimes the windows are absolutely remarkable what they do with them, because they really do it all themselves. So then I thought I'd share with you my thoughts on what I feel is important, what I call the rights-based human development, because I think without it, unless you have these 5 elements, I don't think that you can expect anybody to start becoming productive. Normally the UN system, to me, is very strange, the cluster system, where they say, okay, one organization will do shelter, the other one will just do water, the third one will do just plantation, and so on and so on. So that means that in no one place you can have all of these elements which actually make up a better quality of life for you. So I feel that we lose out on that. So for me, it's been important to provide everything. All these 5 elements are without it, I don't think anybody can really function. This is the essential rights for every family to have their amenities, which might enable them to achieve increased human, social, and economic development, as well as privacy and dignity for women. You must know that these are all elements that women need. Without it, it's very difficult for them to really live a proper life. So now this is, we can see safe shelter, sanitation, lighting, water, and clean food. And clean food means the Pakistan chula, because that is, and you can see now, we started working in the middle of September, and after 8 weeks, safe shelters are 80% complete, sanitation is 50% complete, lighting is 100%, water is 100%, clean food is also 100%. So that means it can go very, very fast, and it requires actually very little money. And you'll be shocked when I tell you the figure. I think I'm spending only about 60 pounds per household. Oh, 5 minutes. Okay, good. All right then. So so now very quickly again, let me just go to see how we now making arrangements to prevent large-scale damage and minimize displacement, which is the disaster preparedness. And oh, sorry, so these are just the shelters. I'll just very quickly go them, how beautiful they make them. Again, you can see amazing creativity all there. There's the toilet on the left, there's solar light on the right. There's hand pumps on the left and the chula, platform chula on the right, all made out of earth and so on. So now I want to just take you very quickly to community disaster preparedness, where I feel that's something that is key to everything. So at least we start off doing something now, which is very preliminary, but I think it will help them to, prevent water ingress as, sort of not freely coming in. So there are platforms for water and food, there's raised farming beds, extended family enclosures, there's dining platforms for each family. Now I've said, I don't want anybody eating on the ground, so they're all building beautiful dining platforms, external boundaries, and community forests. So very quickly, I'll just show you some of the pictures. This is the disaster preparedness. On the left is the platform for water and food, and on the right is raised farming. There's on the left is again, enclosures for low walls, and again you can see each one is now taking care of it. On the right are these dining platforms that are becoming bigger and bigger all the time, and then you have this boundary wall on the outside, which will prevent the water just coming in. And then the forests that you can see. So there's these, all these are being taken up by the community as we tell them that this is something that would be good for them to do. And they're just following, and they just teach each other, and this is going on. So now again, quickly about livelihoods. There's a list of livelihoods that each different community or each different village has taken up. So each one is specializing in one or the other, and most of them have begun to earn small amounts of money now. So it's very important that we don't wait for recovery to start doing this kind of activity. So because now, this is what we can do. And so they're just, again, very quickly, the images, the enterprises, the nursery village is growing food. This is the fishing village using local ponds and local streams. And this is for matting, for walls and for roofs. And then, on the left, you see, chicken and goats being reared again for food. And then this is my pottery village, which has become very, very busy and become very popular. So now we know that at present there is no government strategy in place for dealing with the vast number of displaced people. And this is a time when all infrastructure has been washed away. There was, in any case, there wasn't very much there of either physical or social infrastructure. So now it's a clean slate, and I'm convinced this is the time to enforce a new system, which would also create a framework for community participation that would foster dignity and respect for women and define their role in development. This is something we can do now, I think. We have witnessed rapid outcome due to combination of training and capacity building of communities. This is what we've been doing all these 8 weeks. All activities being spearheaded by women in the cluster. Since we are providing assistance only in the form of materials and guidance, it is really through their own efforts that they are transforming their own lives. And this must be seen. This is what they are doing. I mean, we are only helping and facilitating. As I said, it's costing only £60 per family, which is literally nothing. Probably cost of a meal here or something, I wouldn't be surprised. So a small amount of income has begun to be generated. And the question is, how can this small prototype be scaled up? This is why I'm here today. So, but can projects be entirely community driven? I'm not a development expert, and I know that today I'm in the midst of an assembly of development gurus and others who become development gurus very soon, I'm sure. So the thing is, what do we do? What kind of strategy do we develop now to adopt an alternative way of dealing with communities or with poverty? I'm told that the best way to take up projects is to provide policy framework and guidance to government agencies for implementation and scaling up. But then those frameworks have floundered and poverty levels continue to rise. So why is it happening? What's happening? Where is the strategy? As the architect for the poorest of the poor, my favorite title given to me by Politecnico di Milano at the time of award of their coveted honorary degree to me, I've learned to engage with communities. And I know that they are willing to acquire skills and training in sustainable green initiative, they will do it. And of course, it is women who then accomplish the most phenomenal work through co-building, self-building and co-creation. So here I am asking now for you to help. So I've got a whole list of things, and please go through it and see if there's something that makes any sense at all as to how any one of them or some of them can be achieved. I don't know, you are the development people, you have to tell me what can be done. Because I can only show you what is possible on a small scale. I mean, there's just one prototype, and maybe I have maybe more. I mean, we are into something like maybe about 5,000 families now, but I mean, that's still nothing to compare to 5 million. So how do I get to 5 million? That's my dilemma, and how do I solve it? And so above all, how do we ensure economic independency and a regeneration of local economy by building capacity of local and entrepreneurs and especially women? This is really what I am looking for. So it's my last slide now. So sorry, no, just let them go further. This is from 6 to 10. So this is the great deluge. Okay, so I need a mercy of another kind. I mean, I know everybody is everybody wants to help, and there's so many people who express that they want to give something, do the fundraising or all the rest of it, but I don't think that is the right way somehow. So, but I do need a lot of help because I need to pursue an ethical, humanistic humanitarianism somehow, which will be different from the usual one. So direct adoption of these community and villages, how do we do that? Establishing a barefoot knowledge network, how can we do that so we help each other? And thirdly, provision of climate smart trainings. So Professor Melissa and IDS, are you ready to help my communities? Thank you very much. Thank you.
That was extraordinary, and I think has given us a different lens and a different take on issues that have long been discussed at IDS in relation to development, bottom-up development, community self-reliance, avoiding charity, empowerment, development from below, humanitarian preparedness and response from below. And yet, I think by connecting these things to architecture and the sort of material circumstances people are living in, you've given us enormous food for thought, actually. And I hope that we can now have a discussion which will pose some questions to you, because I'm sure there will be people who want to know much more about the detail of what you've been doing and what you've achieved and where those ideas have come from and where they're going. But I hope maybe we can help to answer some of the questions that you posed from the very different lenses working across the sectors that people in this room have engaged with, whether it's sanitation or agriculture and livelihoods, or questions around urban planning or the use of water and resources, and all issues that you've touched on and that connect, I think, in really interesting ways with Barefoot Social Architecture. So, colleagues in the room and online, it's over to you. Let's have questions, comments, thoughts. We'll take a round perhaps initially in the room, and then I'll take some from the online audience, and then we'll come back to Yasmeen, and then we'll have time, I hope, for another round as well. So who'd like to begin? Yes, we have one in the middle.
Hi. Great lecture. Thank you so much for your time and all the information that you've been so generously sharing with us. A question that I had about your model was how is waste management dealt with, especially in the sanitation context with respect to, say, menstrual waste or like sanitation waste with respect to babies. So how is that dealt with? How is water managed? If you could shed some light on that, that would be great. Thank you.
Okay, lovely.
Well, yeah.
Okay, so there's one at the back here. If you come up the middle.
Hi, I'm Bharat. I'm from India. So thank you for this. I have worked something on the similar line.
Can you speak a bit louder, please, if
yes,
you don't
please.
mind?
Sure. So I'm Bharat. I'm from India, and I have worked on the similar model during the COVID, where we have set up emergency isolation unit made out of lantana camera, which is a weed in the Nilgiris district of Tamil Nadu. So which was around, it costed around 500 pounds for us to set up each unit. So my question is, we had good support from the administration, the local administration. So we were able to take it at scale. So how government supported you, or did that sort of been a, what to say, roadblock for you, or has the government been supporting for you? So I just want to understand that. Thank you.
Okay, that's interesting. So government support and scale up. Perhaps come down to the front. We'll go to James, and then just behind.
As the son of two architects, rather like you, had a bit of an epiphany. They were deeply ashamed later in their careers for their role in building huge concrete jungles in the UK in the 1960s to house our poor and working classes. And they grew to deeply regret that. And they would have loved your lecture. But I wanted to ask about the role of the state, because towards the end, your slides almost seem to suggest that you see community empowerment and community-led housing and as more important than the government's responsibility. But in your vision, does the state carry a responsibility to provide its citizens with decent and carbon neutral homes and housing? Thank you.
Yeah, excellent. So I just go to Annabelle there, and then I might take a couple from online, and then we'll come back to you.
Hi, Yasmeen. Thank you so much for the lecture. I just wanted to ask about the kind of backlash you received. I suppose, firstly, on a community level, obviously being quite a patriarchal context, if there was backlash from the men in the communities you worked with. And then also from some of the donors and the government structures in place, if they were kind of opposed to this radical approach. And if so, how did you kind of bring them on board and get buy-in the end? Thanks.
Okay, excellent. Right. And just, okay, perhaps we'll take a couple online, and then we'll, because that's quite a lot of questions, and then we'll do another round in a moment. So,
okay, this is from Imran. These low-cost sustainable houses must need ongoing maintenance. Would you share how they do that, or what type of assistance they get?
Great. And maybe just one more. And then
this is from Camilla. How can decolonial thinking be included in architecture and urban rural planning education? What can colonial reparative justice look like in the area of sustainable architecture?
Wow. Okay. Big questions. So, Yasmeen, I don't know if you've got all of those, but just as a reminder, we had some that were quite practical. So how do they deal with waste management?
Right.
How does one deal with ongoing maintenance? We had a couple of questions about scaling up and government support. One, the example from India, a question in the UK that came from the UK experience about the role of the state and government responsibility. Then a question about backlash, any backlash from either men in communities or indeed donors or governments who resist your approach. And then finally, how does this relate to debates about decolonizing development, decolonizing architecture, which we're all having at the moment. So,
right. Yeah, all very interesting and very pertinent questions, actually, all very relevant. So let's look at the waste, first of all, and how do you do that? So basically, in communities like the rural communities in Pakistan, particularly, there really is not that much of waste, first of all, in terms of, the solid waste. And I only use eco toilets. We promote women learning, and women do it, not men, is to make compost out of the solid waste. And we've designed special WCs which separate, the liquid from the solid. And of course, the solid is collected every day. It used to be done, in the 1930s even, in many places where it was taken, and then, you make compost out of it. So I think we need to have that, because we had this earlier discussion on this, and of course the sewage system doesn't work. In any case, it's far too expensive and nobody can afford it in the communities. And I think that's the best way you don't have any waste. And a lot of times, we have a lot of cow dung and others which we are using in briquettes, and also now that my women are making these wonderful pottery, so we have this traditional kiln in which we use all the waste to fire these products. So there's a lot of possibility of reusing the waste that is there, and I think that's what we should all be looking for. So that's something that can be done. And then of course, and sorry, you have to remind me.
Ongoing maintenance was the other,
yes.
the other sort of more
Okay.
practical
So
question.
right. So I for a longest time I thought that my lime brick will work and so on, and it actually doesn't require that much maintenance. It does require some, but not much, because lime is a fantastic stabilizer. So where earth disintegrates, as we know, and that's why it has this terrible kind of a, nobody wants to use it because they feel it won't last. But once you add lime to it, that's amazing, because somehow it's not been used in humanitarian work. It was used always in conservation, as we know, and for centuries it was used, but not in humanitarian work. So when I started doing it, it's been surprising because it doesn't require that much maintenance. And we've got a brick, and I'll show you if you come to Pakistan. It's been lying there for I think 3 or 4 years in water. It's a high sort of, content of lime in it. It's not disintegrated. So lime has this amazing quality. But of course, there's some maintenance needed. For instance, in the buildings I built with bamboo, but finished off, of course, with the lime and mud, this get disintegrated in the recent floods, where because of the water backlash, it all came off. But that can be repaired very easily then, because it's all something that's available. So it's all, we can do it. And communities learn, and that's why we need to teach them how to take care of these things, and they will do it. They do it themselves, right? And
so is this all community responsibility? What's the role of government? What's the role of the state here?
Yeah, that's a big question, and I'm asking you this because in places in places where government is non-existent, and as I showed you, I mean, it's been now middle of August, all things started, and now we are into middle of November, so that was 3 months, and neither our government, nor the state, nor the World Bank, nor the UN system has any idea yet as to what they must do. They're still thinking about it. And they can't decide whether it's still the emergency phase or have they gone into now recovery phase. And so what do they do? So they'll be debating this for some time. And I think the answer that I'm hearing, and I don't know, but I think it might be true from people like the World Bank sources, that they would like to have contractors, they use concrete structures, and some others are talking about prefabricated units being flown from God knows where, from outside and being used. And I mean, 5 million families, I don't know how they're going to do it. So that's why I'm asking, is there no other way that we can bypass the state and just do it through communities, because they are ready? So maybe there can be another model. I mean, it may, and at some point in time when the government is ready, of course we can collaborate, but as long as they don't, then do we leave everybody just in the way that they are because government is not forthcoming? I mean, I think you guys have to think about it. You are the development experts. I don't have to give you the answers.
That's a good question. And finally, would you have any, the backlash question. So have you faced resistance or backlash either from, I don't know, men in the community around the women's empowerment issues, or from donors or government? Yeah, well, it's very strange, but because I work in these very mundane materials, nobody takes it seriously actually in my country. So they think it's not worth looking at. And so I go along and we do the work with the communities, and the men are actually very supportive. I mean, we are encouraging women to come forward because they're the ones that lead everything, but it doesn't mean that men are marginalized. They're very much there, but they become then then facilitators or helpers. Like if a woman is producing something like all this pottery, then they will go and market it outside. And this I've seen even from the earthquake area when we started off with just bead bracelets that the women did. And they were sold by the men. They would get the raw material from there. Even today, for instance, the ones who are doing the matting or making the roof thatch, it's the men who get the material from the canal or something, and then women are the ones who are making it. So it becomes a partnership, and it's not that men are marginalized. They're very much there, but they are not taking the lead role. That's the only difference, actually. Okay, great. And any comments on this point that was raised about decoloniality? I mean, in a way, yes. Well, I mean, we've got to decolonize in the sense that we need to lose control over what we do. I mean, as architects, we're very possessive of what we do,
And, you know, as I said, I had to lose my ego to be able to work with communities because I was trained like all other architects to, I mean, you saw the buildings I built and you can imagine, you know, so one thought so much of oneself, you're so full of yourself, you don't want to, you know, give up. And so it is a hard thing, but I think that now the time has come when, you know, there is so much that can be done with the vast majority that we never were aware of even. I mean, architects, I don't think ever thought about the poor people. It never appeared on our radar. So now I think the world has changed and our young architects have to now change the way they work. And they are far more aware and far more attuned to the present reality of climate change and everything. And they are the ones who are talking of circular economy. They are the ones who are talking of, you know, sustainability and materials and how do you reuse and refashion and all the rest of it. So I think the time is right for the young people, as long as we can get to them. And if universities are teaching them the right ways to approach it, I think they will do it. But also at the same time, what is needed by the young people really is a support system by either universities or by the practices who are doing well, forming pro bono wings for work, or universities providing them incubators, you know, for 2 years, like technology does. I mean, there's a lot that can be done to encourage this kind of activity, or for the I think the aid agencies to say, well, you know, this is something that we want young people to be involved in, because they don't right now. So I think we have to be working with many different sectors to be able to get the help that young people need who want to get into this field. And I know there's so many who do. So we need to work that out as well, you know. Yeah.
Right. So let's have another round. Questions or comments? I think there were one or two that I missed out on last time, but perhaps we'll go to the middle here. Yeah.
Hello, thanks again for the lecture and how like circular economy or things like that can be applied pretty much in every sector, also in architecture. There was a moment when you mentioned the idea of natural carbon neutral in contrast with engineered carbon neutral. And I was thinking at that point on how this type of model you've shown is something that is like embedded in like history and traditional culture. Like in the past, societies used to be sustainable. That was the only way. Only in the last 200 years we've got this other model. But in terms of the more like mainstream architecture that we can see in places like in the West, what's your opinion on people trying to make it more circular and more sustainable without fundamentally challenging the system in the way you've done, such as the idea of having everything powered with renewable energy, the idea of using green hydrogen to get steel and other materials instead of using the type of energy that is being used nowadays, the idea of recycling materials. For instance, I know that with the steel, it's quite easy. You can simply melt it and you get you can use it again without losing property. So what do you think about that idea of like making changes to make it circular and sustainable, but not necessarily doing it the way you've done it in Pakistan, to try new approaches here in the West?
Okay, great. Good question. Yeah, we could just move along here.
Hi, thank you so much for such an amazing lecture. I was just wondering if you have any positive or negative concrete examples of why bottom-up approach is so important in these models.
Okay.
Sorry, what did I say?
Any sort of examples of why a bottom-up approach is so important in these examples? Yeah. Okay, that's great. Yes.
Hi, thank you for the insightful lecture. I was actually curious to know, since you mentioned that you don't believe in focusing on funding from international organizations, or currently the government is also not supporting the work you do. So how do you keep it sustainable in terms of the resources needed to continue the work you do and scale it up?
Okay.
I mean, in terms of the funding required.
So where does the funding come from? Yeah, a little bit more about the funding model now. That's great. I'd like to hear more about that. Good. Yeah, and let's go to the front row here.
Yes, thank you very much for the lecture. Just a similar question about solar panels. You mentioned solar panels in the end. I'm wondering, where are they sourced from? Because I don't have a lot of information, but from what I know, the government has controlled it, especially
So the Shehbaz Sharif government had controlled, the imports of solar panels and even production of solar energy in Pakistan. And then the other question is, I wanted to know what your opinion is on cash for work programs. So NGOs had started a lot of this model in 2010 after the floods, but what's your opinion on that? Because I think the thinking behind that was that people will be moving from their lands, from the landlord's lands, and contributing their time to making these homes. So that was the thinking, but what's your opinion on that?
Okay, yeah, good. So anybody else in the room? Otherwise, shall we pick up a couple more questions from our online audience?
So mine's quite a simple question. Over the last 2 years, I've been doing the marathon. I've done it twice a year. This is the second time I've done it. So this time I did it and I raised £425, and I raised it for the flood victims in Pakistan. And I wanted to ask, what was the best way to spend that money?
Okay, let's do this. Sorry. Okay, if you raise personal money, as this colleague did by doing a marathon run for charity, and a few £100, what would be the best way of spending it to support flood victims in Pakistan? That's a good question. Yeah. Okay, so we've got one more here. Sorry, keeping you running there, James, and then.
Hi, I just wanted to understand, like, going forward, if we take up in this particular model in a bigger scale, this is largely for me a basic survival, basic needs sort of a thing. And but how do we then tackle the question of larger well-being, or in terms of the community's interaction with the larger world in a certain sense? How do we then tackle our approach to a basic larger level?
Okay.
For disaster preparedness, was it?
No, I think more about how to, if your approach is a kind of satisfying people's very basic material needs, how does one then move perhaps to meet people's aspirations for different kinds of lives, and perhaps for a greater connection with the national or global economy and what it might offer. Yeah, something of that sort. Yeah, great. So I've got some notes of those. We'll come back to them. But Gary, a couple more, perhaps just pick out two from our online.
Okay. This is from Elizabeth. How can we better scale up climate smart construction in contexts like Pakistan, when business as usual is resource intensive construction? How can we change the mindsets of those in the sector?
Mindset of those who? Sorry. How do you change the mindsets of those who are building high carbon with industrial materials?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. One more. This is from Andrea. Could you mention some characteristics of those women communities participating as beneficiaries in those social architecture projects?
Okay, the characteristics of some of the women. Okay. Right. That's another range of really good questions at lots of different levels. Have you got notes of some of them? I can remind us.
Yes, okay, yeah. Yes, okay. Yes. So I think the first one was about, carbon neutral structures, and yeah, and sort of sustainability. How do you bring about that, basically?
Yeah.
So how do you change people's mind? Well, I think the way we can do it is possibly, as I said, the young people are already very much aware of all this, and they are very keen to change. I think the profession has to really rethink its role. And as you talked about decolonization, I'm talking about decolonization and decarbonization of architecture. Actually, both have to go hand in hand today. But unless we do that, we'll never be able to get to the people, because all of us will be busy trying to, as I keep on saying, pandering to the whim of the elite, because that's what we've been taught. And of course, it's okay up to a certain degree. I don't think that we should give up completely, but I think there could be parallel ways of working for the other 99%, as I said. And we have to find a way to do both, possibly, because architects do want to have free hand to do something, spectacular. Yeah. And I can understand that. I've been wanting to do it, and I've done it in my own life. But I think we have to talk more about these issues. I think climate change does not appear so much on architects' radar, which I think must now. And I don't think most are familiar with the fact that by building, how much you are hurting the planet, actually. So I think more of this discussion, and I was very happy the other day, I heard, the Commonwealth Association of Architects also taking up all this, and RIBA taking up. So hopefully, this will begin to happen. But finally, it will be the young people who will change the whole thing, I think, it won't be the other generation, certainly not mine, and certainly not even the younger ones, I don't think. So
I mean, just in response to the question that was raised over here, so you're generally positive about these moves to be more circular, more reusing materials. It doesn't all have to be. I mean, you've presented, as it were, a revolution, a bottom-up revolution of doing things completely differently, and yet there seem to be some architects who are embracing slightly more incremental changes, kind of moving. Moving more piecemeal towards better approaches.
I think a lot of absolutely. I mean, there's a lot of work going on in degrowth, for instance, as to what you do and so on. There are lots of thoughts that are there, and many architects are working on, for instance, a kind of eco-urbanism that is so important. And there are people working, on how do you make basically sponge pavements where the water can be absorbed by aquifer rather than all over the place. So a lot of people are working on it, but I think we need to now create a movement of some kind. And also, the whole thing about conservation of heritage buildings is so important, because the moment you demolish, which is being done today in Karachi, I mean, I cannot tell you what horrific things are going on right now. But to build up new construction or new buildings means more carbon. And the more we can reuse and adapt and so on, the better it is. So, of course, there are many solutions, not only one. But my issue, of course, is the disasters and how do you deal with that? But of course, there are many other ways. You should come to Karachi. I've done, as I mentioned, I think, a zero carbon street where I've used no concrete or steel, and it doesn't get flooded. So there are ways of handling all this, all of us have to be ready for all that. So certainly. So there was this thing about bottoms up approach as to what, Well, you see, but I've done both. I've done the other one as well. And I find that the other one doesn't really work, because it is a limit to how much it can, or whatever it does is only up to, in terms of number of people that you influence or can deal with is so small compared to this one, where you can actually transform people's lives. So much more rewarding. And I think I'm all for it, because I've experienced it, and I find that, it's something that requires so little effort and can have tremendous impact. So working with communities, I think, is always good that way. I think it's rewarding. So I'm all for it. And any one of you who wants to come and work, as I said, to come to Pakistan, work with my community. There are lots of them right now who need all this, right? So, and then there was this thing about funding. Where does that come from? So I think the young lady who talked about, running the marathon and raising money, and that's what I need, is for you to now connect up directly with the people. Pakistan diaspora has given so much fund, I can't tell you. They have all been raising funds and putting it into this, what I call the black hole. And so money is never a problem, I might just say, It's really how you want to spend it and how you use it. That's important. And so I would really like a way by which, I keep on saying I want a kind of a humanistic interchange where, you can help people who really need it directly, rather than giving it to somebody anonymous. And I mean, I really kind of an alternative to, let's say, the capitalistic Amazon, where, you're supplying. And so if we could create something like that, that'll be amazing, because the need is there, we know, but it has to be done in the right way. Only then it'll make a difference. So how can we develop that? That's a big issue for me. And so if you can come up with any solutions, we'll apply it in Pakistan. So please do think about that. It is very important today. And there was a question from a young lady here about solar panels. Well, they are mostly China fabricated, and they're available in plenty right now. And they're not all that expensive. They are, but not all that expensive. And because everything is now wiped off, I mean, there was never really much from the grid in any case for these remote areas. So you had to rely on, basically, you just had darkness as soon as the sun set. But now with this little bit of lighting, it's transformed their lives. I mean, women say that first they used to dread the night, and now they wait for the night because now their hours have extended. They can give medicine to their children, which they could not do before. They can cook at later hours. And or my communities are working away on the forest, because I said I want them done fast. So at night they do it, you know. So it's amazing how little is needed to transform their lives, actually. And that's what we all need to do, basically. Yeah. And what was it? What else was there? Sorry.
I mean, there was just a couple of final questions. And somebody was asking a little bit more about the characteristics of those women who you're working with.
Yes.
Maybe one could link that to the question about actually what are their aspirations?
Yeah.
What kinds of futures do they want, perhaps within or beyond the community, and how is your work helping to support their own perhaps bigger aspirations for life transformation?
Yeah. Well, you know, working with communities, what I find is it's, you know, they are just deprivations of kind that we can never even imagine. I mean, isolation, being not able to be connected with anybody, just living a life in total isolation. I mean, many of our communities are living like this today. And just the fact that they can now connect up with each other. I mean, there are villages who never knew each other. They've never been to see each other. And now they're helping each other because the work is going on. They come here, they learn, and they go back. And these women go to them and teach them how to make the stove or you know, how to build the platform. And so this whole sharing is creating another kind of momentum for all of them. Now, they're all mostly non-literate. I have to tell you this, they're not, I mean, hardly, they've begun to sign because I said they must open bank accounts. So for the first time they've signed their names and so on, but they have aspirations. They want to have a better life and they can beautify anything. I mean, you saw her, it's just nothing but earth. And they use this, you know, their skills to just make everything so much more livable. And so my job is just to facilitate. I'm not really doing it all for them. I'm only doing half the job. The rest is theirs. And so that means that they can go right ahead. They want their children to go to school, but there are no schools. So now I need a direct way of teaching children, you know, like through, I don't know, through Zoom or something, or I don't know, we're trying to put a program together as my second phase. So I hope and health facility. I mean, these are also important aspects. So I think if we give them the opportunity, they'll just run with it. They'll do it themselves.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Well, I think that is a fantastic note to end on, and what a fantastic lecture this has been. I mean, you began when you spoke about the Barefoot Social Architecture with 4 zeros. And I can't quite remember what all the zeros now were. But as you've talked, I mean, what's come into my mind is actually a lot of Ds. So we've got design, which is actually critical, how design can support dignity, which was something that really came through to me as you were showing the decoration, the way that space can actually make people help people to feel okay again when they've undergone a deluge. There's another D. I think we've been talking about disasters and preparedness for them and doing that in a very community-centered way. We've been talking about decarbonisation, been talking about decoloniality, and I really like the way that those two can go together in the work that you've been describing. And then finally, really, there's a D for disruption. And when we were having our discussion this morning, and I think it's come through again, I think we were reflecting on how crisis, and my goodness me, the Pakistan floods have been an immense crisis, which is in turn an outcome of major intersecting global crises of climate, of economy, of poverty, of inequality. And yet disruption itself can often throw things up in the air and allow revolutions to happen. And I think what you've shown us today is a revolution that is happening at the grassroots, that is pointing to some different directions, that's pointing to some transformations of knowledge, transformations of lives, to quote a bit of IDS strategy, and that can actually begin to give us some hope at a time when it's very, very easy to despair. So I think we all need hope, we all need optimism, and thank you, Yasmeen, for showing us some places where that can be found, and for sharing with us what an enormous amount of creativity can happen as part of linking design and development. So please join me in thanking Yasmeen Lari for this year's annual lecture. Thank you.